No, seriously, I have. It's because it was just such a late evening, etc.
Hmm.
So my brain is getting a little bit foggy. This topic I could do. You're
Okay.
better off to talk to Kevin directly, and he'll
Okay.
certainly set me straight because I know I'm going to hear an earful of it after.
Okay, no worries. But like, I mean, look, we had a lot of technical stuff going on, so we're fine. So tonight, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to be transitioning over from rock music to haunted houses, which is in line with Halloween, well, dark time of the year. But I mean, dark in what way? You know, it's always, I know that Hollywood always has a way of making things kind of like seem dark and dangerous, but really Halloween, as a pagan, sort of pagan religion, part of a pagan concept, is more about communing with the ones that have passed on, and communing with those beyond the veil. And I can only speak for myself, but I don't really see it as negative. I think that yes, there are sometimes things that do happen that can be negative if you're not careful. Like if you do something silly and you, for example, go out and start. Oh yeah, so I just noticed my moderator posted a link to the book in the live chat. So guys, check that out. All right. And but getting back to that, I know that sometimes people do something silly like play with Ouija boards and all that kind of stuff. So you can, as a tendency, when you do stuff like that, you can open up doorways that are not meant to be open, and you could have negative experiences. But I don't see Halloween at all as negative. I just see it as a time when we are faced with the other side, and it's just a way for us to explore that other side, and we shouldn't be doing it in fear. We should be just doing it in terms of curiosity. But that being said, there are a lot of people, I know that we brushed upon it last week, but there are a lot of people that have actually had paranormal experiences. And you know what's interesting is that there is a TV show which you can find clips of on YouTube, full shows, but there is a show, and I forget what it's called, but I think it's sort of like it's about Hollywood actors that have had paranormal experiences, and people that have grown up in houses or have had paranormal experiences while on film sets or all that kind of stuff. And it's something that really happens quite often, and a lot of people, you know, grow up in houses that have hauntings, that have had a history, and in which case they feel certain things, or they feel foreboding sometimes. Sometimes the experience can be positive, and sometimes it can be negative, depending. But haunted houses are nothing new. And it seems that people have had those experiences a lot. And what's interesting tonight is that Angela herself has had experiences with growing up in haunted houses. But we are going to be looking at the whole concept behind ghosts and hauntings first, and then we're going to be moving on to the concept of haunted houses. So let's get to that, shall we? All right.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we're going to be looking at, I guess we could say, what are ghosts? So, what you want to just sort of like go through that bit?
Well, there are different ideas as to what ghosts actually happen to be.
Hmm.
What I have always been told ghosts happen to be, and there, as I said, there are two different schools of thought on it. Many times it's loved ones or individuals who have died suddenly. It could be that they passed on without having things accomplished, so they want to come back and there's something that they still need to do, unfinished business. And the other school of thought is that in many cases they're residual energy, so that event keeps replaying and replaying and replaying. And I did have the opportunity many years ago when I was ghost hunting to meet an individual who wrote many, many books on residual energy. And I had a chance to actually work firsthand with him with regard to that. And I wish I could remember his name offhand. If I remember it, I will certainly post it.
Sure.
But it's just a totally different concept of, when somebody passes through that area and so many times that energy just remains. um, the other school of thought is that many times it could be a portal to another dimension where beings are coming through.
Okay. And so one of the things that is interesting is that the idea of ghosts actually sort of, I guess, perpetuate the concept of an afterlife. Because I know that for some people,
Absolutely.
especially in history, some people sort of felt that, well, when you die, and that's it. But for some reason, even there's even actually the picture in that slide that you have there. That's a picture. I forget his name. We're all about forgetting names tonight. But this was a writer in ancient Roman, I think in ancient Greek times, and he used to hear a ghost that was constantly rattling around in his house. He had rented a house to write his book, and then in the house that he was in, there was always a lot of this ghost and rattling. And I think the story goes is that once he went because the ghost kept on pointing to a certain area outside, and it turns out that he found the guy's body, the deceased body, and when he gave it a proper burial, the ghost went away. So it seems that in that particular story, that there is definitely the idea that there is an afterlife and that there can be visitations, and that it seems, and it's also in all cultures, and that's the thing that's probably going to get into a bit later. But the idea of ghosts, definitely, at least in my opinion, I can only speak for myself, but I definitely feel that ghosts exist. I think that I've seen enough in my own personal experience that ghosts definitely have a place in our world, even if it's sort of like beyond into a different, beyond the veil, as it were. But I definitely feel that they have a place in our world and in our life. And I think that what often happens is that we separate, this world and the other world, and we really shouldn't, because it's all one thing. But different cultures, like in the West, they try to sort of separate it, but in other parts of the world, they see it as a part of everyday life. What do you think, Angela? Do you feel that well, have you seen a ghost yourself?
It's hard when you say see a ghost
Mm-hmm.
because many times you can see them. However, I tend to see them more with my third eye and I
Mm-hmm.
perceive them, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
So, literally, I have been at a friend's house and I can feel the presence. I can see them in my mind's eye and I can describe them to a T, just like you and I.
Mm-hmm.
However, it's not something that other individuals can see. So, depending upon your level of intuition, your level of high vibration, etc., you may or may not be able to sense or see them. I am also a psychic and a medium, so it's one of the gifts that I possess.
Mm-hmm. Right. And so would you say, so did you grow up, I guess, with and more in a religious background? And did you find that in your own growing up as a child, for example, that this is something that affected the way in which you saw ghosts?
Believe it or not, I grew up in an extremely religious Catholic background.
Oh, okay.
But I also grew up with a mother who has openly proclaimed that she is psychic, which she
Mm-hmm.
is,
Mm-hmm.
as did my grandmother.
Mm-hmm.
So I was not a stranger to ghosts, to intuitive abilities, to psychic abilities, etc.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, I had, I can't say the best of both worlds, but it was something that I grew up in a fairly open um, background.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the thing is that the reason why I asked that question is because when you're looking at ghosts in different religions, it does make a difference, because I think that in the,
Yes.
excuse me, in the Western religion, the idea of ghosts is sort of frowned upon. Would you say that that is the case in the,
I would totally
yeah?
agree. There are people that are becoming more open to it,
Mm-hmm.
but if you look at some of the European religions and the European backgrounds, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
look at something like the gypsies, you look at something like the Egyptians, they believed in the afterlife and the underworld, etc. But there are many other cultures, the indigenous, they
Mm-hmm.
call upon their elders that have passed. It all depends on what it is that you grew up with.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have a variation of roots, I actually have, believe it or not, gypsy roots.
Oh, there
I
you go.
have indigenous roots, and I also have European roots. I think that's one of the reasons I was able to see a bigger view than what some people grow up with. But I do also know many people that the minute that you start touching on those subjects, it's taboo.
Yeah.
Don't dare talk about that.
Yeah, and especially when we're looking at something like, for example, with ancestors, and I think that that's more of where I sort of, kind of feel that that's more. I mean, I have more of a West Indian background. I have obviously an African background as well, but from the West Indian perspective, especially if you're like from Jamaica, it's very very prevalent. It's very very prevalent, and
Definitely.
people often talk about it. In Jamaica about duppy and all that kind of stuff. It's something that's very, very common, and it's funny because having grown up here in the West, and when I look at the perspective there, in Jamaica, for example, I feel that sometimes it's always again looked upon as a negative, but then there was also a lot of negativity that took place in a lot of these islands. Don't forget that a lot of people were in slavery back in Jamaica and in different parts of the Caribbean. So, especially Haiti and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot. I mean, Haiti,
Yes.
the Maroons definitely conquered slavery, but for everybody else, slavery was a dark past, and so a lot of people died very very horrible and very very treacherous deaths, and there was a lot of like sadness and sorrow. So I can see why ghosts in that perspective, in that kind of culture, might be seen and a bit more negative, and in terms of the religion could be seen a little bit more negatively, and that's how they want to always protect themselves from the negativity or protect themselves from the darkness, that sort of thing. But I think that if you can go back and sort of say, okay, this is something that has happened in different parts of the world, then you can sort of see it, just sort of look at it from a observational point of view without sort of getting involved in it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. I agree
Yeah.
that way.
Yeah.
The other thing that's very interesting is that if you look at some of the cultures, such as Japanese and Chinese,
Yeah.
they also have many spiritual views and ghosts in their culture.
Yeah.
And if you happen to look back far enough, but then you get certain movies that they come out with, and I'm thinking, unfortunately, in our time,
Mm-hmm.
the media has glamorized a lot of these things or sensationalized
Or
it to the
hijacked
point.
full on,
Yes, absolutely. And people are terrified of
Yes.
what they truly don't know. There's
Mm-hmm.
been so much hidden from them that is the truth
Yeah.
that you really don't know unless you explore it further and unless you know what you're looking to find.
Mm-hmm.
It's a matter of doing your homework, like
Yeah.
anything else. I mean, you look at something like New Orleans, where they have
Mm-hmm.
all of the different festivals and they
Yeah.
practice a lot of Haitian and voodoo,
Yes.
but every culture has a background that is both positive and negative.
Exactly.
And just like they talk about witches, given that we happen to be in the witching time,
Yeah. Exactly.
it's intention. There are
Mm-hmm.
not good witches and bad witches, it's intention.
Exactly.
So it
Absolutely.
depends on the spirits you're pulling forward.
Exactly. And especially in a place like New Orleans, New Orleans, again, a lot of slavery and a lot of tragedy and a lot of like magic, magic brought over by a lot of African slaves that came in sort of, there was a lot of mixture going on there, but a lot of the African traditions that were brought over. And, some of those traditions were misunderstood. And like the whole idea about voodoo being all negative and all that kind of stuff, that's Hollywood of the 1970s. Voodoo really,
Absolutely.
I mean, yeah, voodoo was around back in the day, but it really only became prevalent in the, let's say, the Western psyche towards the 70s when you started having a lot of these black exploitation films.
Yes.
And so you saw a lot of these black exploitation films that were coming out in the late 60s, and most of the 70s, and they showed black people as being these wild and voodoo and all that kind of BS. And voodoo, in many times, actually has a lot more of a Christian basis to it as well. Actually, a lot more,
Yes, it
and
does.
and different sort of gods and goddesses and all that. So like it's just again how Hollywood has taken, hijacked, and has altered the concepts. And again, one of the things that for me is a big theme is the idea of not seeing it as a negative. I mean, yes, don't stand there. I mean, you see this sort of big crazy thing coming at you, get out of there. But at the same time, sort of look at it as more like, how can I connect with my ancestors? And it's more that,
Yes.
especially from a African, perspective. It's really about ancestors, and even from the native, indigenous. You know
Absolutely.
what I mean?
Indigenous is huge.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. So, one of the things that so it again, it changes from religion to religion. And I think that it's really interesting if you have a chance to look into the different religions. I know that one of the things that people are not excuse me, familiar with is, for example, from the Middle Eastern perspective, like the jinn and all that kind of stuff. That's kind of interesting,
I I actually have roots that are Middle Eastern as well.
Really?
Yes, I do. My dad was actually born in Baghdad.
Okay.
So I have a lot of these little tiny pieces, makes
Oh,
me who I happen to be. So I actually grew up reading Arabian Nights and
okay.
Jinn, the sorcerers, um, similar to Aladdin, things along that line. So for me, there's a lot of historical value, and that's one of the reasons that I really enjoy the esoteric part of my life because I can certainly relate now as I'm in my adult years much more than I ever could before.
Okay.
And I'm beginning to see where all of these little spider webs happen to intersect and come together.
Okay, wow. And can you just tell us a little bit more, because I've read a little bit, but I don't really understand what are the jinn exactly? What is that?
The jinn are, from my understanding and what I have read, they are a genie, but not of a good nature.
Mm-hmm.
They are generally more of a demonic nature. And in many cases, they were called upon by sorcerers who were looking to do negative
Mm-hmm.
things for people. Kind of like a leprechaun type
Oh, okay.
individual, where essentially you may have X number of wishes or you would be called upon, but there's always a price to pay.
Okay. Wow. And so basically, it's not, I guess, the best thing to. It's not like genie the lamp that you rub it and then like poof, things come out. That kind of thing.
Well, they are like Genie of the Lamp, but they're not like I Dream of Jeannie, where
No.
she basically just nodded her head and it was all nice and good, etc.
Mm-hmm.
Unfortunately, it's more along the line of a negative entity who, I mean, the closest thing that you could say with is a deal with the devil,
Mm-hmm.
except this is the our Arabian Mediterranean equivalent of the devil. And that is just how they happen to view it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I will say, I don't know 100% that it is true or false because we didn't exist in those times. And
Mm.
as you well know, there is a basis, a true basis for many of these things that have come forward.
Yeah.
Dragons, etc., and jinn. There are historical records that go back and say, yes, there were jinn. Whether or not they truly exist, that's up to the viewer.
Yeah, exactly. But one of the things that I found interesting in terms of this topic was because I see myself. I mean, I grew up Christian, and I was baptized and all that. But I feel that at this point in my life, that I'm more of a Buddhist. And what was interesting is that the idea of how the Buddhist concept looks at ghosts. And if you look at what's there as Buddhist, ghosts are often seen as the souls of those who died violently or were improperly cremated, and their spirits are unable to transition peace. That's Hinduism, peacefully. And then ghosts are thought to be souls caught in a cycle of reincarnation, often due to negative karma from past lives. And I think that kind of resonates with me. I think the idea of being in a karmic cycle and not being able to sort of get off the hamster wheel seems to make sense to me. But of course, obviously, if you like, as in the Hinduist tradition, if you've died a violent death, then you would, end up having, in my opinion, that makes sense, that you're going to be stuck because you didn't finish what you had to finish. And but at the same time, I kind of wonder about that, because if you choose the life that you choose to come here, and yeah, I guess you sort of choose to sort of experience that. I mean, it's a horrible thought, but like, I mean, it seems to be somehow that case. But I guess, the body does go through a violent shock if you're, you have that sort of thing happen to you. I don't even want to say it. But that's a lot of also the reason why you have a lot of haunted houses is because of the residual
Yes.
haunting. You know what I mean?
Yes,
It seems
absolutely.
to be a part of that.
And in some cases, they are not able to transition forward as well. Sometimes they are caught in limbo, which is sort of that transitory place between Earth and wherever it is that they're heading back to, whether it happens to be a reincarnation, whether it happens to be another lifetime, etc., or another realm in general.
Okay. Well, you know what's interesting is that as well, there's also, if we had been having this conversation even 20, 25 years ago, I think that it would be very clear the science would have said, ghosts are just a big no-no. And even for example, like a couple of weeks ago, we had a guest that came on the show, Susie Karasik, who was talking about the near-death experience. And what's interesting about the near-death experience is that for the longest time, a lot of people have said, excuse me, that it doesn't exist, that it's stupid, and that you're just crazy and all that kind of stuff. But science seems to be coming around. Science seems to be coming around, and are looking at the near-death experience a lot differently. And but at the same time, science is also looking at the idea of the idea of maybe instead of putting it in a spiritual or story sort of perspective, they are looking at it more from science. And from science, I mean, like, for example, there are different dimensions, just from a whole scientific perspective, there are different dimensions, and we are in the third dimension, and then there are other dimensions, maybe, for example, either 11 dimensions or 21 dimensions, it's your oyster. You can do what you want. But would you say that maybe science can look at this as ghosts existing at a different temporal dimension? What do you think? What do you
Yes,
make of that?
I 100% do agree with that because I am of the mindset that we have multiple dimensions that exist simultaneously with us. And it is just a matter of the fact that we, as lower vibrational beings, cannot see all of the different realms that are truly here coexisting with us. Those that have risen to a higher vibrational frequency are able to see other dimensions. It's no different than having the extraterrestrials that come through. It's no different than having the um, people that have passed or beings that have passed or cryptids that are able to exist on another realm. They, to me, and the other part of it is even the worlds that can exist, coexist with us, but they're hidden to the normal eyes because we are not existing in a high enough frequency yet
Yeah.
to see them. But if you go back to a lot of the telepathy and intuitiveness that we've been taught, or actually, I should say that we've not been taught, that we've had to relearn as you start to get to a higher vibrational frequency, you start to realize there's a lot more that meets the eye that we have no idea. And it's all right here. It's all for the taking.
Exactly. And it's interesting because there someone like Albert Einstein, he was asked about, I didn't even know he did, but he was asked about this as well. And according to Albert Einstein, he says all energy of the universe is constant. And
Correct?
since this energy cannot be destroyed, this can be transformed into new energy or a creation of ghosts. And I find that kind of interesting because if you look at something like that, and I think that everything is energy, as we know. Like whether you be the science or whether you be the spiritual, everything is energy, everything, and it just depends on the frequency. It depends on the vibrational frequency, but it also depends on different types of expression. And so I'm wondering what you think of the idea that maybe this is like, you die and then you go off, and what we consider heaven or hell or whatever that is, you sort of go off into these different dimensions. Because also when you look at someone like Edgar Cayce, everything is existing now here all at once. And
Yes.
so it's just maybe different dimensions that you sort of go into. And if you've died a horrible death, then maybe you're not at for example, when you are doing things too fast and you're in a hurry and you're doing things at rush and everything just seems to not
Yes.
work out. And if you just sort of just calm down and you calmly try to get to where you have to go or do what you have to do, all of a sudden the energy sort of seems to sort of, you know, calm down.
Because you're in flow
You
at
know what I
that
mean?
point.
Exactly.
Yes,
Would
because you
you?
are in flow. The other thing that I'll mention similar to that is
Mm-hmm.
basically when you are in flow and when you are on the frequency, the higher frequency level, you are also operating on the level that you understand what the universe is doing. You understand that you are all interconnected and we are all energy. And as you say,
Mm-hmm.
we realize you and I are connected just like a spider web, and what I do influences you. If I happen to, hurt a flower or a tree or an animal,
Mm-hmm.
that also has an influence.
Of
So
course.
when you live at a higher vibrational level,
Mm-hmm.
that whole realm becomes open.
Mm-hmm.
When you are someone who is living in a loving, um, I'm trying to think of what the word is that I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm.
It's
An
basically a
environment,
loving
and a loving environment type of thing.
environment, absolutely, where you're not constantly putting negativity out.
Mm-hmm.
You find that there's a difference
Mm-hmm.
for how things operate, and what you put out to the universe does come back to you. So if you keep on putting negativity out, that's what's going to come back to you. And that's also one of the laws. I mean, the law of attraction.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that that's another reason why, for example, when you have, depending on where you are, you can see different types of ghosts depending. And, you can, but, sometimes you have a situation where a person dies in a house, for example, and they're fine. And, because I've also heard people that, some of these ghost stories, you sort of see them on YouTube, these stories about ghosts. And you sometimes have a ghost that's very helpful. Sometimes the ghost is just
Yes.
attached to the house because that's where they lived, and they died of old age and they died in the house and all that kind of stuff, but they're not negative. So there's never, again, going back to the idea of this, doesn't always have to be negative. But, and it also shows a certain amount of free will because yes, and we're not going to sort of go into the whole sort of like dissertation of like different religions and all that kind of stuff, but if you believe that you have a certain amount of free will, you choose to stay in the house, or you choose to
Yes.
move on.
Yes,
What do you think of that?
absolutely.
You know?
I totally agree with that because I have actually been in several haunted houses, and sometimes they do, for whatever reason, they are very comfortable in that environment. Maybe they are somebody that doesn't have a lot of family, or somebody who has made a commitment to helping other people for future. So if that's what they choose to do, that's what they choose to do.
Yeah, and so basically, when we're looking at haunted houses, what we're looking at is really the idea of residual hauntings. You know what I mean? So it's
Sometimes, not always.
yeah. Okay, so would you want to just sort of like what your consideration is about residual hauntings? Like, how's it compared to, like you're saying, it's not always the same thing, but how would you describe a residual haunting then?
Residual hauntings are generally, as you were saying, if somebody resided in the house, this is their daily go-to. So essentially, their energy remains. It is
Mm-hmm.
not necessarily the spirit of the individual that remains. It is the um, the energy that keeps going back and forth, but
Okay.
it really is not the spirit. I have also been around individuals that their spirit relatives have taken it upon themselves to be protectors, guides, and that is something that we didn't touch on at all. But very often, you will have a grandparent, it could be a parent, it might be an aunt, an uncle, some sort of an ancestor who comes back because all of us have guides that surround us all of the time. And our
Mm-hmm.
guides do change depending on where we are in our journey.
Mm-hmm.
But many times, those guides, those ancestral guides, choose to stay with us, and they may be of a spiritual nature. So they could be ghosts per se, especially if you were somebody who was very well loved by an aunt or an uncle, and they just have, that was part of what they decided they were going to continue for their journey. That I am going to, as my earthly duty, as my earthly, what I pick that I want to come back and do is I'm going to help to guide.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes that is their karma as well. And I have also heard that it is something that they can select to come back. And I won't say as a reincarnation because they're not reincarnated at that point, but as just to be a guide for, like, for instance, here we all chose to come back during this time frame, during this particular lifetime. So they may say, okay, when this individual comes into this lifetime, this is what I'm going to do.
Okay. Wow. And that's interesting because if you look at the concept, that's more from the person's perspective. The person can make the choice and have free will.
Absolutely.
And what's interesting about residual hauntings is that residual hauntings can also, and this is where it gets kind of interesting because the concept, according to the slide here, is that a residual haunting can be a lot of things, but it's unlike, intelligent hauntings with a consciousness and a spirit. A residual haunting is considered to be an imprint of energy, often from a moment of high emotion or trauma, trapped in a location, repeating without awareness. And this can manifest as visual apparitions, sounds, or even smells that occur in each way at each time. And some of the times people, how they experience this is, for example, people who go to the United States and visit, areas that were very active during the Civil War. People that do
Like
reenactments,
Gettysburg.
like
Yes, I have
Gettysburg.
been there actually.
Exactly.
And that is something that when I went, I had the great, um, what's the word I'm looking for? Privilege of being with a gentleman who, as I had mentioned earlier, wrote a couple of books, well, several books, in
Mm-hmm.
fact, and it was all on residual energy and how us being in those areas actually keeps that energy active
Mm-hmm.
if you just sort of let it be. But his whole idea was the fact that you can capture it and it's the same occurrence over and over and over and over again
Mm-hmm.
because it is the residual energy that is being replayed, as opposed to an active spirit where it more like a poltergeist. I'll use that as an example.
Okay.
You could get activity that differs every single time.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is the biggest difference between a residual energy where you're just seeing an individual walk across the street per se, or something that is actually playing around and pulling things out of the cupboard.
Exactly. Now,
It's a
with
very quick version of how to describe it.
yeah,
But
I remember hearing an interesting concept in regards to excuse me, residual haunting, and that is of a pub in the UK. I can't remember where exactly, but it was a pub, and the pub had been built partially along a road. And the thing is that the road had moved a number of times because obviously, as you know, England is very old, and it has had many different structures over the centuries. And what's interesting is that the pub in question had been built on an old road. And they didn't really know that, but they said, who cares? We're going to build on it because that's how it is physically right now. And the pub owner talked about how many times they saw what could be best described as a legion of Roman soldiers walking through the pub, along the
actually,
road. And they were just sort of walking around, and they weren't even paying. They were doing their thing. They weren't looking, and like they were just. It was obviously as if it was a image in time, and that
yes,
the person was looking as if he was looking at a video, and went click, and then he was able to see this image in time of soldiers going along the road, horses, carriages, a whole bunch of things, and it was just like a certain clip, and then boop, it was gone. And so it kind of makes me also wonder at this point, if we're especially talking about the idea of residual, but also about different types of dimension, it means that in some ways time, I mean, that could be a time loop. We can sort of get all
yes,
sort of Einstein on everyone, but like, I mean, that's sort of like a time loop, and then that's also you're looking into time. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know where I'm going with this, but like, I mean, it's just that it seems that we're going from one aspect of haunting to another aspect of actual science and the idea of time travel, but the idea of seeing through time. Like, for example, like this Looking Glass project, in the United States, the CIA,
Absolutely.
who are able to sort of open up a window into time and to see aspects of. I've heard that people who have worked on that project looked and saw the crucifixion of Christ. Crazy. So you can open up time and look through it. I don't know. How does that, that's a curveball. What do you think of that?
Well, one thing that I can say, and this kind of segues back to our prior
Mm-hmm.
conversation that we were having, the Ponti very much discourage going through timelines, because when you start doing time travel, you actually, there's something called the butterfly effect.
Yeah.
Things that you in each period of time affects the future and present.
Mm-hmm.
So they do discourage things like that. But
Mm-hmm.
I do very much agree with what it is that you're saying, because, yes, when you are looking at something that is a residual energy,
Mm-hmm.
it is not interactive with you. So it's not going to have that same kind of an effect. And I do totally agree that there is some sort of an imprint that is made, regardless of what that occurrence might have been at that point in time, that event. Literally, it just keeps replaying and replaying and replaying.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And so my moderator was put a little message for me saying the stone tape hypothesis. I think that, yeah, sometimes sort of like you can record things in stone. So how about that? Or, if you really want to sort of get hyperdimensional here, we can talk about, the crystal skulls, but that's a whole other story for a
Yes,
whole other
it
day,
is. I
because I
actually
think you can actually,
have crystal
you
skulls
know what
right
I mean?
here.
You know what? Sorry?
Yes, I do know. I have two crystal skulls here.
Yeah. And you can actually, and so again, everything, you see, everything is connected. I think that's what I'm getting from
Absolutely, it
this. So
is.
we're trying to talk about one
Absolutely.
thing, but then we end up going into all these sort of different, tangents. Everything is connected. It really is. And the idea that you can put intention into, especially crystal, and especially quartz crystal, is a very,
Yes,
very
absolutely.
holds energy. It holds knowledge, and and the crystal skulls are able to hold that information because you can put it through, especially with your mind, and you know, and put all that information in there. So why not? No.
Definitely. The other thing that people have to realize is many of these stones have been formed over hundreds of thousands of years. So look at
Mm-hmm.
all of the history and the elements and the scenes that these crystals have had embedded within them. And that's one of the reasons certain crystals, the one that I have here is called the Lemurian quartz, it is a holder of Akashic records. And if you
Mm-hmm.
look at it, it actually has striations in it. And what I have been told is those are record keepers.
Oh.
So again, like you were mentioning about kind of like a needle on a record,
Mm-hmm.
as you run your fingers over top of them, you are able to relate back to different events.
Exactly. No, absolutely. So so now that we've gone down that road, you yourself have been you grew up in parts of Canada and parts of the United States, and
Correct.
you've had your own experiences with haunted houses. And if you
I
at
have.
home have had interesting experiences with haunted houses, put it in the chat below. I'd love to hear what kind of experiences you had. I know we brushed upon it very briefly last week, but if you've had lived in a haunted house, please let us know. We'd love to hear it. But tell us a little bit more about your experiences, Angela, and when did this all start for you
Absolutely.
living in haunted houses?
Well, my earliest experience with haunted houses was the house I grew up in Detroit, Michigan.
Mm-hmm.
And my stepdad passed away when I was 7 years old, and it was December. Being a young child, you don't think anything of it. Young children are very impressionable. And my mother, and I still remember this, doing this physically. I had two sisters who were younger than I was, and a brother. My brother wasn't able to walk at that point. He was literally 6 months old. But after my stepdad passed away, we would literally hear footsteps and run to the front door like he was coming home from work. He died very suddenly. of a heart
Oh.
attack.
Oh no.
And the belief is that he did not realize he was dead. So we were literally running to the front door as kids. The other thing that, and the dog even would run to the front door. The other thing that I very, very vividly remember, and you have to remember, I was 7 years old. He used to always shake us on the shoulder to wake
Hmm.
us up for school.
Oh.
I remember being woken up by being shaken on the shoulder. And I remember saying to my mom, "Did you shake me awake?" And she's like, "No." And I said, "Well, I know I was being shaken awake." We also had items. This happened just before Christmas time. My mom said that she was standing on the back porch at one point and she was wrapping presents, and one of the presents flew across the ironing board that she was wrapping on, and she couldn't figure out why. Well, when she looked into it, she happened to find out that we had all gotten Barbie dolls with the stands.
Hmm.
This particular box was missing the stand.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean, we
Okay.
had things like that that happened for many years. After that, we ended up, she moved us to Canada because this is where her family was from.
Hmm.
And lo and behold, we moved into a haunted house.
Oh, really? Okay.
We did. We ended up going from one type of haunting to another.
Mhm.
So, the house that we moved into, when you looked at it, it was an old farmhouse. And it originally had, it was on a double lot. You could see physically where they had built the original part of the house and that they had added on to the house. And I can remember saying to my mom, like, there's something weird going on in this house. At this point in time, I was 10 years old.
Okay.
We would have the bed that would shake violently at one point, and I think this is probably where I first realized I was intuitive and could see things. I could literally see beings in the corner. There was two gentlemen, older gentlemen, and I remember hollering down to my mom. Our bedrooms were upstairs and her bedroom was downstairs, but I'd be saying to her, "They're at it again, my bed is shaking."
Oh no.
Oh yeah, yeah. At one point we had, and my as keep in mind, my mom was psychic. My her brother and her sister both had high psychic abilities. We at one time, and I don't necessarily condone Ouija boards. If they're
No, I
used
don't condone
properly,
that at
but
all.
we at one point had one, and we did find out that there were other spirits in the house.
Yeah.
And there were people, once we found out, the area that we were in was older farmland as well. So we don't know if there were ever bodies that were buried on the house, but we do know there were many other families that lived in that particular house, including the gentleman who lived next door's parents at one point lived in
Hmm.
that house. So, given the age of the house and some of the
How
secrets
old
that
was
it
it?
had,
How old was the house?
the house was over 200 years old.
Oh, okay, well that's enough. That'll do it.
So exactly, exactly. We also know that the house was on some sort of indigenous land because at one point,
Oh.
digging in the backyard, we found an arrowhead. And my mom at one point said that there was a portal that opened up in her bedroom and she saw an indigenous figure on a horse come jumping through the window. This,
Wow.
like, I mean, these are the kinds of things that we had, but we would hear voices, disembodied voices. There was a black cat that at one point you could see just in sort of um, gauzy type form. I mean, it was very ethereal. There was a little boy that we would be at the kitchen sink and he would be coming next to you and he would either pat you or he would sort of tug on your clothing. Um, I remember my mom saying, somebody saying, "Guy, come here, Guy." Just like I said, disembodied voices of children, of adults. I remember seeing somebody in the living room at one point sitting in a chair and knowing that there was nobody there. So these
Hmm.
are the things that I grew up with. I mean, it just, nothing surprised me after that. It really didn't, having grown
Wow.
up in that kind of environment. But you also learn very quickly when you start sharing these things with people and they look at you like you have two heads,
Hmm.
that you don't share things with people until
No.
you are around the right kind of people.
Yeah, exactly. And I just wanted to just say, I definitely don't condone the use of Ouija boards. A big, big no-no. Big no-no. I mean, I can't tell you what to do, but it's really not something you want to play with because you have absolutely no control of what you're letting in or letting out, that sort of thing. So
And that is
think
the
twice.
problem is you open a portal, and
Yeah.
unless you are knowledgeable and skilled in the practice
Yeah.
to be able to say, I'm opening a portal that is only for, the greatest and highest good, etc.,
Mm-hmm.
being young and naive, you don't do that.
No.
And at one point when we were sitting, and it wasn't the first time that I had sat with my mom or my aunt, etc., I mean, we did get names that came through and we got other information that came through, but it
Mm-hmm.
was certainly not something that I ever continued.
No, no, absolutely not. And it's interesting that you shared that story about being shaken awake. I remember being a young girl in my apartment, and I think it wasn't so much about. Well, that's weird because remember we had one or two apartments, and there was this one apartment that was on Guy Street, and my mother's, and this was in the '70s when they were starting to build a lot of new stuff, in that area. And that building was actually quite new, but it turned out that it was also on an Indian burial ground. Go figure.
Oh my
Oh my
goodness.
God. And so my mother said stories about how she would see, Native Americans, heads coming through the wall. And I mean, I remember hearing voices as well. And I remember feeling always like a presence. I remember I talked about it last week, but I always remember feeling a presence and always feeling watched all the time. My whole childhood, I felt watched. I remember being in another apartment that we were in on St. Matthew, no, de Maisonneuve. And I remember being in my bedroom and hearing all at one point I was sleeping, but I was woken up by all these voices, different voices talking. And I remember sort of like sleeping on my one side with my back to it. And when I woke up, I was yelling like, I can't sleep if you're going to make all that noise. And I heard them go, oh, she saw us,
Yes,
I
and that
never
is
heard that
very
again.
disarming. Absolutely, it's very disarming when that happens.
Yeah, and it's funny, and a lot of people have had that experience. I've spoken with a lot of people, and this other girl in my office was saying that she saw that this guy used to be standing at the foot of her bed, and that she was like,
That happens very often. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
And I
and
don't know why they decide to stand at the end of the bed.
yeah,
It's like, it's always just something that you want to wake up to. And usually, as you say, you can feel the
you can feel
presence
it.
there. And it's not unless you happen to be just in that right state of mind,
Hmm.
you may very well open your eyes and see this
Surprise!
individual standing there. And it's like, oh my
Oh
goodness.
my god!
And you don't know whether to be terrified
Or like, who are you?
or close your eyes and pull the covers back up
Yeah,
over
but
your
that's what
head.
she did. She pulled her, pulled the covers over her head, and she was like, "Oh my god, I can't look." I would be tearing out of there. Sorry,
No, I totally
you know.
agree.
But but growing up, did you manage to at some level connect with some of these entities, these spirits? Then
I
you have any kind
did.
of? Do you want to tell us about that?
Yes, I absolutely did.
Mm-hmm.
The other place that I had a lot of frequency with was at my grandmother's place in Detroit. And I used to go and visit my grandmother all the time. I was very, very close to my grandmother. And I mean, obviously, some people believe this, some people don't, but animals also come back in spirit
Yeah,
form, as
they
I
do.
mentioned about the cat. My grandmother, the house that she lived in was an older house, and there was a deceased person that was there. And at one point, my grandfather passed away in the house.
Okay.
He used to come all the time, and you could feel him sitting on the bed. But there was also a German Shepherd. And literally, I would sleep upstairs. She had a great big canopy bed that was absolutely wonderful. And this German Shepherd would put its paws on the bed, and you could feel the whole bed actually push down. But literally, because
Oh.
I grew up with it to such a degree, it would be just a matter of saying, okay, guys, you know what, I'm trying to sleep. Can you just leave me alone? Or, I'm busy doing whatever. But we got to know these beings, these ghostly beings, pretty much as family to a very large degree. Now, we did have a couple of them that were a little bit mischievous.
Okay.
Once in a blue moon, and I wouldn't say they were poltergeists, but every once in a blue moon, we would have things that would go missing. And it was a matter of saying, okay, like, I know that I had this sitting here. Can you please make sure that you bring it back? Usually within a couple of days, things would reappear.
Okay.
And we knew it was not my brothers and sisters. It wasn't
Mm-hmm.
anything else. I mean, I'm sure there were things that they did take, but
Mm-hmm.
it was something that I think was just of interest to them. And I don't know if it was so that they would get our attention more so than anything else. But when you would have tapping on the windows or tapping on the wall or tapping on the bed or the hand on the shoulder, etc., usually it was to get your attention so that you could understand something that was going on. And
Okay.
we often got to the point where we would ask if there is a message, and this is the stage I'm at now. If
Okay.
there's a message that you are trying to give me, give it to me in a clear way that I'm going to understand. And that is, as I said, how I've progressed to this point.
Okay. That's amazing. And so this sort of experience growing up, I guess, like you said, it allowed you to become comfortable with the concept of
Absolutely.
growing up with these ghosts and having these experiences. So I get the impression from what you're saying, you weren't really sort of like, it's not like these sort of TV shows where you have people like yelling and screaming and running around and all that kind of stuff and being afraid. You didn't seem to sort of, I mean, maybe you did. Maybe you had these sort of like
I
Hollywood freakouts, but
I was very, very lucky that
mhm,
I had good and positive experiences for the most part. However,
mhm,
I did in my later years, I was in my 30s, I decided because I had so much experience and I happened to meet someone who was into the same type of experiences, I actually ghost hunted for over 5 years, officially ghost hunted. So when
oh,
you see these paranormal experiences shows on TV, I did those things. I was at Gettysburg. I was at um, Ruthven Cemetery. I have
mhm,
been to the Battle of Lundy's Lane in Niagara Falls, Ontario. I have been to Fort George. I've been to several forts.
mhm,
The one at Fort George, that was very interesting because many things that we cannot see with our eyes, cameras can pick up.
mhm.
And I remember very vividly, I have pictures at my mom's place still on a computer that we were taken. It was a clear night walking in, yet in the photo that I took, it was foggy. And to date, there are over 42 faces that I saw, one of which was a little boy sitting at a desk, and there was a teacher type of person standing next to them. But one of the most extraordinary experiences in the fort itself, other than hearing voices and feeling different things that were going on, was pictures that I took of candlesticks in one of the bedrooms. And the candlesticks were literally, the flames were extended and they were at a 45-degree angle. There was no breeze in there whatsoever.
Okay, wow. That's pretty interesting. Now, just to sort of make sure we understand what is ghost hunting exactly, because you see these TV shows and they're running around and I find, personally, I mean, look, no offense to people who are ghost hunting, but I find a lot of time it's just like the camera's focused on them and they're just sort of running around and making all these claims and they're not really doing any kind of ghost hunting, in my opinion. I think I'm sure you have some that are better than others. But the idea of ghost hunting, like for example, when you've watched the movie Poltergeist by Steven Spielberg, that those were ghost hunters that went into the house to explore. So we're not talking
Yes.
about Poltergeist per se, but it seemed to be a bit more sort of like scientific. Or you have Ghostbusters, from a more lighter side. What is ghost hunting? Just to sort of get a clear understanding of what that is.
Well, the ghost hunting that I did was actually very interesting. And I'll tell you why I stopped, and then I'll sort of backtrack.
Okay.
I stopped ghost hunting because what I realized was that many of the spirits that are here have either been stuck here because, as you say, they've either died very uh, tragically, they died very quickly, they have other karma. So, I mean, for me, when I was going in and ghost hunting, I was trying to release them and help them to be guided to where it is that they were meant to go.
Mm-hmm.
And what I happened to find with ghost hunting was that the individuals who were putting on the tours were literally keeping these spirits stuck for monetary value.
Oh
That is why
wow.
I stopped because
Okay.
it was just totally against everything that I had.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in my mind, what the original idea of ghost hunting was meant for me was to go in, and help these spirits to identify whether or not there were physically spirits there. And there are many different means that we had. I mean, some people would talk to them through, there's actually apps that you can get on your phone. There's like a box that you can have where they
Mm-hmm.
speak words going back and forth, very much like the movie Ghost, where they
Mm-hmm.
communicate through the stereo, etc.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we used was you can use an EMF machine to see whether or not the electromagnetic
Frequency?
energy has changed within the room. Sometimes areas will become hot or cold. Another thing that they very often will use is called a mag light. It is a small flashlight that operates by a battery. And what you do is you unscrew it. So there's just barely contact. And because ghosts are energy, you can literally ask them, you put this light down and ask them questions, and they will communicate with you. And that was very, very successful. I did that a number of times. Not all of the ghosts were friendly. There were occurrences where they attached themselves to people, and
Mm-hmm.
there was actually a couple of times that things like that happened. But as I said, it was more to establish, were there actually beings that were there that were unexplainable? I had a very good camera, and I took many, many different photos where you could see apparitions, or you could feel the energy. You could feel the difference in the cold and warm. And we many times would have 10 or 15 or 20 people that were there and that were present. The other thing that was very, very interesting was we would have a recorder with us. So you would have the recorder playing, and many times it's not until afterwards that you would be able to replay it, and you would hear in the background voices. It might be a sentence, it might be laughing. I was at one place in Gettysburg where literally they were playing a player piano, and you could hear
Okay.
the piano.
Okay.
So that's the ghost hunting was all about the fact of, can you establish without a shadow of a doubt that there is other energy that is present here with us? And I would say the majority of the time the answer was yes.
Okay. But it also goes back to what we were talking about before about the idea that there is an imprint, a residual imprint. Obviously, something like Gettysburg, for sure. You know, people, young
Yes,
men who have left home for the first time, they might be 15, they're kids. You know, they're 15, 17 years
absolutely.
old, leaving house for the first time and, you know, facing certain death and they're dying and they don't know what's going on and they're scared, you know, and they're lying down on the
Exactly.
field, bleeding out and dying. That kind of thing is definitely going to leave an imprint. You know what I mean? And
Yes.
and and there's also all the fear, and fear is a big one. And fear, unfortunately, can leave quite
Fear
the
very
imprint.
often keeps people stuck. And that
Yes,
is part of the reason why we are taught to live in fear, so we stay stuck. Once
exactly.
you start realizing that we don't have to live in fear, and we know that there are other realms out there, we know there are other vibrational frequencies, your whole energy flows differently.
Exactly. And I mean, I'm not going to like oh, a whole other tangent, but I've often heard people say that, the fear, and going back to the Buddhist concept of the fear keeps us stuck, and there are beings
Absolutely, it
who
does.
are controlling this planet from an extraterrestrial point of view who are trying to play with our souls and keep us stuck in this reincarnation cycle because we are
Yes,
fearful. And
I've
if
heard
we,
that as well.
yeah, and if we get rid of the fear, we can move on and say, I remember somebody saying to me, when your time comes, don't ask so much to go to the light, but ask to go home. Because by going
Yes.
home, you can avoid all that sort of trap. I don't know. I know it sounds kind of like completely like, whoa, where are we going?
No, but it all happens to flow in with what it is that we're talking
Everything's
about.
connected, you know?
Absolutely, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely, 100% plus.
Yeah. But sorry, I cut you off, but what were
No,
you
no, that's quite all right.
yeah. But so would you say that the reincarnation trap is a part of that?
I have actually heard that the reincarnation trap is part of that, and it is to keep us coming back in this same loop, as opposed to trying to release us to go home or wherever it is that our soul has decided it wants to go in our next life, if you happen to believe in that type of a format.
Yeah, and I have an interesting comment here from Kelly. Kelly says, after my dad passed away, I saw him 4 days after he passed right in front of me. As I woke up, and I've seen ghosts and spirits around me, but only as soon as I wake up. So it looks like I have to be relaxed. And that makes sense, Kelly, because it's sort of like the theta state, I think, right? When you're just sort of waking
Absolutely,
up.
it is. Yes, it's exactly what I was going to say. Is it's your
Hmm.
theta state. So when you're just in that in between, you're much more receptive to that type of energy and that vibrational frequency. And that's why if you go into a deeper meditative state, you'll find that a lot of times it's easier to do.
Yeah. So that's kind of interesting. Um, so in terms of the ghost hunting, I mean, that's sort of very that would have crushed my soul. You know, the idea of people trying to keep ghosts here is just so they can make money. That's like
It
having
did.
like animals in a cage. It's like, oh,
It was devastating to
horrible.
me when it finally hit me
Wow.
that that's what they were doing. I totally got completely out of it.
Yeah.
But I mean, I had had many really amazing experiences.
Hmm.
One of the very interesting ones that happened was I was using a mag light at a haunted, it was an old, I'm trying to think what it's called. It was like a big, kind of like an apartment building, but it would have been from like the 1700s. And it was used at one point as some sort of a military hospital. And this was in, I believe it was New York State. I can't tell you exactly where, but
Hmm.
apparently there was a soldier that was there. And I was using the mag light to communicate with this soldier. And apparently the soldier took a liking to me and decided to follow me.
Oh.
Yes, but the thing was, because he followed me home, I had to basically say, I could feel that there was a presence with me, and I finally started communicating, and it's like, yes, it followed you back, and I'm thinking, oh, this is not good. It's like, I'm sorry, but you cannot be here. This is not where you belong. You need to go
Hmm.
back to where it is that you belong.
Yeah.
So very often, that's what I was doing, was telling them to go back where they were from.
They probably picked up on your kindness. I think that's what
My
probably
energy.
your
It's the
energy.
energy signature,
You
the
know.
vibrationary signature. And it took
Hmm.
me many years to understand that.
Yeah.
Because
Exactly.
again, they see light and
Hmm.
they want to be where the light happens to
Of
be.
course.
And it's a, as you say, it's a kind soul.
Hmm.
So they figure that they can be helped. Now,
Hmm.
there was a place in Ontario that I went to, and funny enough, when I was coming back earlier today, I happened to pass it, and I have very not good memories. It's called Ruthven Cemetery,
Okay.
and I went on a ghost hunt there. I could hear the beings in the cemetery. And there was actually someone that was present that evening who there was a sort of a hedgerow that you had to go through, and it was very, very dark. And one of the people that was present apparently had a really bad experience going through the hedgerow. So somebody came out to us and they gave us a warning. Well, I could feel a very negative presence that was there in the cemetery. And I said, okay, we really do need to go with the individual that I had gone there with. And this individual was not aware of protecting themselves. I mean, I'm used to, because I ghost hunted, I made sure I knew how to protect myself. I used my salt, I put my bubble of white light around. I mean, I
Hmm.
always would say, whatever is here, you are not allowed to come with me, etc. And they had forgotten to do that. And oddly enough, we were on our way to a seance in Niagara on the Lake. And this individual, as we're driving, says, I feel very weird. And apparently I was intuitive at that point. And I said, what is it that you're feeling? Because I could feel their energy change. And
Hmm.
they said, well, it feels like something has attached to the back of my neck. I said, I'm sure you have an attachment. This
Yeah.
entity has attached to you, this negative entity. Lo and behold, we happened to be at this seance, and a very, very well known psychic from the Niagara area happened to be present and spoke out and said, there is an individual here that has a negative attachment, and you need to do this and this and this and let
Hmm.
it go. And that's exactly what it was.
Wow. That.
So things can be very scary that way. I mean,
Hmm.
if you don't know what you're doing and you just go out there and you think, oh, I'm going to go out and have fun and do this, you open a whole great big can of worms. You really do need to be prepared. I mean, I was very lucky because I had grown up in an environment, and I did a lot of background before I started doing all these things. And people would think I was a little bit crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I am. We're all crazy to some degree.
Yeah, of course.
Sure that I protected myself. I even
Mm-hmm.
had holy water with me always.
Yeah.
When I went ghost hunting, there were rituals that I did
Mm-hmm.
to ensure that these beings did not come back with me.
Yeah, and you know, it's funny because I'm glad you mentioned that because sometimes I see these ghost hunter shows, and look, I'm not trying to sort of poo-poo on anybody, but a lot of times it seems to be a bunch of guys, you know, sort of like, you know, them against the world, and a bunch of guys going off and doing this thing, and I think to myself, are you guys protecting yourself? Like, I never see any mention of that. Once in a while, they'll bring a woman on board as a psychic, but a lot of times with a bunch of guys with a bunch of cameras and, you know, turned on them and are just sort of like breathing heavily, kind of like, you know, what is it there? The Blair Witch Project kind of look, kind of aesthetic.
Yes, yes.
And they're just sort of running around. And I'm thinking, you guys have no idea, you know, like you don't really know what you're doing. And you just go into these houses and also one thing that people don't talk about is that sometimes if you're not grounded or rooted, if your aura has
Yes.
any kind of open or tears in it, something can come in and, you know, from anything from being an attachment and giving you a hard time to possessing you. You know, if you know what I
100%
mean,
correct.
did you want to just sort of
Yes.
like go down that road a bit and you know, and this is why I keep saying, guys, no Ouija boards, no, no,
Yeah,
no.
exactly. Well, it's not just Ouija boards, though, and people don't realize that
Mm-hmm.
it's actually much more extensive than that. And I
Yeah,
do have a Facebook page, and many, many times when things come across my feed that are important, I will post them up there. People don't realize um, antiques that you pick up from other people,
exactly.
very old energy with it. You need to clear those. If you have, and this is one of the reasons that sometimes you will see, especially in old houses, all the mirrors are covered. Mirrors can be
Portals.
portals.
Yeah.
There are certain sections within your house that are portals. Electronic devices, many times, TVs especially, can be those kind of portals as well. If you happen to be somebody who's around negative individuals, those are all portals. And there are several other ones as water. If you're around, yes, water can be clearing,
Yeah.
but if you are doing negative activities around water, you have to be very, very careful. And it's all intention as well. I mean, if you have negative intentions, you draw in those negative energies,
Mm-hmm.
and people don't understand that. So, so crucial when you go out. You cannot be in a negative state of mind at
Exactly.
all. And literally, I've been to many haunted areas, and they tell you if you are in a negative state of mind, I'm sorry, but you are not welcome to come into here because you bring
Exactly.
in the wrong kind of energies.
Exactly. Yeah, and as well, you can also, um, even if your intention wasn't to do anything negative, you'll attract that, and you can,
Yes.
you know, and they can follow you around, and you know, you don't know what you're doing, and that's why I find it weird when people say, "Oh yeah, I like to sort of." You know, go when I went to when people go to France or whatever, they say, "Yeah, I visited the cemetery and this and that," and I'm just sort of like, "Oh no." I mean, that's not for me at all. I mean, yes, I can protect myself, which I would do. But some people say they walk through cemeteries and find it calming. I don't know. Like, I mean, cemeteries is not from. It's
I
not my style.
I can't go near cemeteries because they all start to talk to me, anybody that
Exactly.
happens around there. And literally, when I would go to Gettysburg, and this is not a word of a lie, I would have my eyes closed. And the same thing happens to me when I go to the old forts because I have such a high intuitive
Mm-hmm.
energy. I can have my eyes closed and I can feel the second that I am close by. If I'm not driving and I literally was half asleep and I said, we just hit Gettysburg, didn't we?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, and the same thing around the fort because that energy is just so prevalent. It's like a big bubble that surrounds that land.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is that they're not being careful. Sometimes people are not being careful when they do this.
No,
And you hear
no.
sometimes these stories about like sometimes these ghost stories, you see these television shows. Oh, you know, we were kids and we were just sort of like, you know, walking into a haunted house and these kind of things happen. I'm thinking, oh my god, you know, especially when you're a teenager and your energy is
Absolutely.
exceptionally high, and you know you're not able to control it. Excuse me. And you don't know. And also, like again, if you have a rip or a tear in your aura, your etheric field, you can also invite negativity, and that negativity can also demonstrate itself in terms of energy,
Poltergeist
injuries,
activity.
poltergeist, but also sickness as well. If you have
Yes.
like,
Oh, 100%.
you know what I mean?
Yes, absolutely it can. And it very often has for
Yeah.
individuals.
Yeah. So like people, you have to really be careful and make sure that you know what you're doing. And if you don't know what you're doing, don't go.
Don't do
Don't
it.
do it. No. Okay. So, but in terms of a place like Gettysburg and all that, I've heard people, and you touched upon it briefly, about how they have. I know there's a certain kind of machine. I forget what it's called, but it records the voices. Can you just talk a
Yes.
little bit more? And I even remember a movie came out in the early 2000s with like Michael Keaton. I forget what it was called.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes. And I can't remember the name of it
yeah.
offhand either. But you can actually there's several different kinds of machines, but there are also, if you just take your recorder on your phone
Mm-hmm.
and you're walking through different areas, it's amazing what you can pick up in the silence, because many times that is what happens. And funny enough, and I'd forgotten about this occurrence, I was actually in a house that I had, and I had a candle that was burning, and I was just watching the flame of the candle. There were no windows that were open, there was no fan that was on, and I have the footage on one of my cameras someplace, and literally the flame was wavering back and forth. So I was watching it with my camera. I put my camera on, and then when I replayed the footage of it, I could actually hear a voice in the background that was laughing. And then when I looked at it even closer, what I could see was in the reflection, it was a glass candle holder. I could actually see faces.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
it was something really, it was like, oh my goodness. It was just mind blowing, absolutely
Mm-hmm.
mind blowing.
Wow. And just to sort of like circle back, that movie was called White Noise. It came out in
Yes,
2005, and it was
yes.
about the electronic voice phenomenon, EVP machine. And it
Well,
seems that people have been using that for a while to sort
yes,
of
they
hear
have.
messages, but also they hear things, and people just sort of talk. But again, you sort of sometimes hear people just sort of just talking, and just little snippets of information are caught on those things. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But some of the other ones that they have, and I know you can download them, some are free, some are not.
Mm-hmm.
There was one that was called, I think, Ghost Words or something along that line.
Okay.
And it will come up and it will blip it across your screen. And we had someone that had one at a couple of these different events. It's amazing some of the things. So it would say cold or green or girl. So, I mean, you could ask it questions. And if you watch some of the old ghost shows,
Mm-hmm.
the ghost experience shows, they do use those as well. And they can be quite accurate, but it depends on what it is that you're looking at. The other thing that's very interesting, especially with the ghost hunting, is I would look at the background of the places that was actually being investigated. So, I mean, if it was an old hotel, what was the history of the hotel? Was there a
Mm-hmm.
fire? Was there individuals that passed away? I mean, there's so many
Mm-hmm.
Hollywood versions of these movies where once you start looking at it, it's like, okay, well, here's the same old story. It was an old building that happened to be burned down and it was rebuilt on this, and there
Yeah.
was, individuals that perished. But when you start looking at the real part of it,
Mm-hmm.
those things do happen.
Yeah,
And you don't
absolutely.
know unless you start investigating,
Mm-hmm.
or if it's an indigenous sacred ground.
Yeah.
It's things like that. Yes, those beings, those people that live there, you're disrupting where it is that they used to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because it seems that Indian burial grounds are particularly powerful. They're
Absolutely, they
very
are.
powerful, and because it's a different type of culture that has a very different connection with the spirit world. Their connection with the spirit world is a
Absolutely.
lot
Yes.
more stronger and intense, and there's very little discrepancy between the world that they're living in and the world of the spirits. So it's just one connective, channel, one line, as it were. And I've heard things where it can sometimes be negative, and other times it can also be, and I think it depends on the situation. Because, for example, in a movie like Poltergeist, it's because and it's funny because I think that Steven Spielberg really hit upon it, because in the movie, uh, the main character, he's working as a real estate agent, and one of his friends is saying, "Yeah, now we did all this place and we have these new houses and all that kind of stuff," and it seems that he's starting to understand that there might be a problem in the house that they're living in, and he
Hmm.
asks his friend, and he says, "Did you guys get rid of the graves and all that kind of stuff that we hear?" We said, "No, we just sort of built over it, and we didn't have time. We didn't want to spend all that money, and no, no, no." And he's like, "What are you
Exactly.
talking about? Like, I mean, you
Exactly. And
said
it
you
came back
lied
and
to
it
me."
bit them.
And like, I mean, you lied to me, and like, I thought you said you got rid of this stuff, and you didn't, and now this is the craziness that we're going through. But at the same token, so that's sort of a negative aspect, and I think that there's definitely a karmic perspective on that if you're going for the money and all that kind of stuff, you're going to have hell. But there are other times where, for example, there was I think it was in the 1950s or so, that a plane had gone down in the Grand Canyon. I think it was in some part of the Grand Canyon. And when the plane had gone down, they had sent people to look to see if they could find the wreckage, and they did find the wreckage, but it was late when they were searching, and I think that one of the people who was working on one of the research teams was someone who was like a park, like working in a park as a park ranger,
Right.
and they had slept in tents at that night to see, to sort of like until so that the next morning they could continue their search again. And the person says that they were woken up and they had a vision, and they saw that these Native American spirits were guiding the lost souls of the people that had crashed along a path in order to get them out of the canyon. And I just get goosebumps. I'm getting goosebumps right now
Yeah,
from
I
that.
just got
I was
goosebumps
like, I was kind of,
myself
oh my
when you
God,
said that. Yeah,
and
no, it's
but
beautiful
it
though.
was beautiful in a way, because they saw that these people were lost, and they were in a canyon, and they didn't know how else to get out. And so they were acting as literally spirit
Yes.
guides out of the canyon so that they could go to find a better place. And so for me, that's heartwarming. That's beautiful, as opposed to, let's say, the poltergeist aspect, which was more about, well, you're all about the negativity, and you didn't even try to have any kind of sacred
The
reverence. The
egotistical. And
egotistical.
that's the problem.
Yeah, and then you end up with like something like that movie that's just crazy, which does happen, like, I mean,
Yes, it does. Absolutely,
you know
it
what I mean?
does.
Yeah, and that apartment building that I spoke about when I was a young kid on Guy Street, that was built on a burial ground. My mother had very positive. She saw Indian spirits that would come and talk to her, and they walked through the walls and all that kind of stuff. But I was a
Yeah,
child at the
yes, they do.
time. Yeah, but I was a child at the time, and I think that they understood that as a child. I mean, you have a certain innocence as a child, and so they didn't really bother with that. But and me too. I'd also another apartment that we had. It was in Haddon Hall on Sherbrooke Street, but that place was the haunted long time. Like, I mean, my mother talked about how I was following ghosts around, and it went through the wall, and I started crying because I was trying to play with this thing. So there's a lot. There's even stuff in Montreal too. You know.
But as a child, actually, I love
Mm-hmm.
Montreal, and I, in fact, did do some ghost hunting in Old Montreal
Mm-hmm.
because it's one of my favorite places.
Yeah.
But as a child, because we are so innocent, we have not been told that these are not real people.
Mm-hmm.
We have that sight that as you happen to get older and as society impresses its norms on you,
Mm-hmm.
you start being told, oh no, you can't see that. Oh no, this is not real.
Yeah.
Where once you start unlearning all of the things,
Exactly.
once you get up to the vibrationary level,
Mm-hmm.
you realize, yeah, it really was true.
It is true,
So
and
all of these things that we were taught, you just have
yeah.
to relearn. And it's so much more difficult as an adult.
Yeah, it is. But you know what, though? I think a lot of people are starting to realize that they say that, kids between the time they're born and 7, they have the highest level
Yes,
of psychic ability. And then you're right, they
absolutely.
unlearn it. But I think that, and I touched upon this last week, is that I think a lot of parents are different this time around. I mean, if you grew up Gen X, it was horrible the way we were growing up, but we grew up. But I think a lot of young children today are growing up, and parents are a little bit more open about that. I think a lot of parents are saying, you know what, I don't want to put my child through that sort of Victorian nightmare type of schooling that I went through, that kind of stuff. And a lot of children are having a little bit more different experiences. And I think that people are looking at their children and saying, you know, especially if they're indigo children and all that, that they're not shunning them for having certain abilities. And I think that the next generation or so is going to be very, very different. The kids are going to be coming through. They're going to be very different because they don't have the same kind of bullshit, you know, schooling that we had. Excuse my language.
Yes.
You know what I
Well,
mean?
and it's not even the schooling necessarily. A lot of it depends on the home environment
Yeah.
that they were brought up in. I have three of my own kids
Mm-hmm.
because my kids all knew that my mom was psychic, my grandmother, my aunt, my uncle.
Mm-hmm.
They knew that I was. I brought them all up
Mm-hmm.
knowing that there are things like ghosts, there are cryptids, there
Yeah.
are extraterrestrials. I mean, I never hid it. As much as my kids at some point we would all joke, oh, you know, my mom's losing it or whatever.
Mm.
Because we had an open mind, my kids all also, I noticed as they were growing up, had those abilities. Whether or not they showed them to other people or explained them to other people was totally up to them. But I know for a fact every one of them exhibited those abilities.
Mm-hmm.
And I know my daughter is much more like I am, but I do know both of my sons also have those abilities. My
Mm-hmm.
daughter's the only one who's really openly talked about it to me, but it just makes such a difference not keeping them shut and put in this little tiny
Exactly.
box.
Exactly. But you're a cool mom. So like, I mean, no surprises there, you know? Yeah. And I mean, but you know what I mean? Like apart from someone like you, who's a cool mom, there, you know, when we were growing up, like I'm talking more Gen X, that kind of thing. When we were growing up, we were shut down. I mean, maybe not because your mom was a psychic, but like, I mean, my mom also had a lot of experiences with the paranormal. But in general fact, if you try to talk to your friends about it, be like,
Well, and I can
cuckoo.
absolutely say because I tried when I was in school. I mean, I grew up with things like Project Blue Book, and I
Yeah.
did a project on that.
Yeah.
I did a speech at one point on extrasensory perception
Mm-hmm.
and essentially got ridiculed
Yeah.
in my class because nobody understood it.
Mm-hmm.
And they were all like, okay, well, what am I thinking? So, I mean, I learned very, very quickly
Yeah.
in my teen years.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that you just don't talk about it. And it's really only been in the last probably 10 years that I
Yes.
have become much more open because now I am in the soul families that understand that.
Exactly.
And that is where I happen to gravitate to because I feel that energy now.
Exactly. And that's why you're part of this family because we are all here.
Absolutely,
You
it
know what
is
I mean?
100%.
Exactly. But that was my teen years as well. People are like, oh, she crazy. But like, I mean, the thing is that
Yep. One of these,
oh,
stay
they
away
give
from
you
me.
this, give you this, and like, no, no, no. But like, and so I completely kept that quiet, and it was only me and my mom that talk about it. But now, in the last 10 years, what I find interesting is that sometimes I will hear people talking in the kitchen, or people, you know, talking, and they'll say, "Oh, it's a full moon," or "Oh, Mercury retrograde," and I'm just like, "Oh." You know about Mercury retrograde, or you know about this, that, and the other, and people are talking about aliens, and I'm just thinking in
Yes.
the last 10 years, people have been really opening up in a sense that much more than what I expected. I thought it was just going to be us sort of tinfoil hats, all of us as a group, but it seems to be that seems to be growing, and especially people that I knew growing up who were completely like, no, I want nothing to do with religion or anything like that, and psychic abilities and all that kind of stuff. And now they're coming around, and I'm like, oh, you're coming
Well,
around,
the ones
you're
who
talking,
are
oh, look at this.
the ones who are supposed to be there will be there. The ones that we're all interconnected with, the ones that are going to stay stuck in that lower vibration, they will not come back up.
Yeah, and it
If they're meant to, they will.
exactly. And I want to just sort of read an interesting comment here that dovetails into my own. It's from Kelly. And she says, I see a huge, tall, smoky apparition again as soon as I woke up since I felt something tapping my feet. And I think this goes back to her
Oh,
father.
interesting.
But I found that it was the exact time my dad fell out of bed and believed it was a spirit. And that's kind of interesting because I know a couple of weeks ago, we had done a presentation with Susie Karasik and Susie was talking about the near-death experience. And as you know, we're streaming this, we're recording all this. And so I'm able to sort
Yeah.
of go back and record things and see the recording. And while I was talking with her, I saw a smoky apparition around her. And I didn't really, and I thought, okay, well, maybe it's just incense or maybe there's dust or something. I didn't really say anything, but I remember looking because, again, as I'm doing this show, I can see the person that I'm speaking to on Zoom. And I can also look across here and I can see what's happening on I can see what's happening on the YouTube screen because I have
Right.
my technician here, and so I'm able to see everything. And I remember seeing it, and I know that when I'm talking on YouTube, doing this live broadcast, I can see what's happening, what's about to happen, because there's always a lag time with YouTube. And
Right.
so when I
Right.
saw the smokiness around her, and I looked, and I said, "Oh, that's kind of interesting," because I said, "It's funny. I don't see the smokiness around her, but maybe it's just I didn't catch it on time or whatever." But then that was the end of it. And so when I at the end of the show, sometimes I talk with the guests, and I spoke with her, and I said, "What were you burning incense, or did you have any kind of like smoke in the house?" And she said, "No." I said, "Well, I saw a smoky thing around you, you know." And I find that recently, and I know that you and I have talked about this, but when you start to do a lot of spiritual work, you start to see things. And we had this interesting
Yes, you
conversation today.
absolutely do.
You know what I mean?
Yes, because you have gifts that open up.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, especially with the solar energy, and AI Atlas is also partly responsible for this because they are carrying frequencies on board
Mm-hmm.
that are meant to open up humanity that is supposed to be opened up more.
Mm-hmm.
So the gifts that are coming in are going to be more and more and more prevalent. And this is going to continue for quite a period of time
Yeah.
because there are many more of us on Earth that are meant to experience that.
Mm-hmm.
And then the whole thing is once people who are at a certain vibration are they maintain that vibration, they are meant to help the new ones that are now coming into those higher vibrationary frequencies.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, we're all here to help guide each other.
Yeah, but we're also, so all of us, a lot of us are waking up. A lot of us, even people who are not like, like yourself and myself, who grew up very, very lucky and had a mother that was very, very intuitive or psychic and was able to, share those gifts with us, just like you're sharing with your children. I find that in general, a lot of people, and even people who are becoming members of this group, I will get a lot of emails from people saying, I've been going through these types of experiences and I didn't go through these experiences before, and I'm going through stuff and I don't understand. And I'm so glad that I'm sort of finding a family where I can talk about these things and watch this sort of stuff. So I'm starting to see it even in the emails that I get from new members, especially about how they're discovering their gifts.
Yes,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you and I have to talk after the show then. I have to inform you about something that I've just recently started.
Okay, that's great. And one thing, Kelly asked a good question, and I want to know about this as well. She says, Kelly Wacker says, "What is it with dolls and being haunted?" Now, is that a Hollywood thing? Or, I
Oh,
mean,
no, no,
what
no,
is up
no.
with that? Please explain.
It's it is not just dolls though. As I said,
Mm-hmm.
there are okay, in Gettysburg there is actually a museum that has haunted dolls and haunted objects.
Okay.
I was there. Um, when I was there, and I didn't bring this up, but it was really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned about the player piano.
Okay.
There, this was at that same haunted museum that they had, and literally, I mean, I could feel the energy within that. Objects can very easily become a way of an attachment,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's a tragedy for a child, whether it happens to be a negative entity, whether it's, like I said, a mirror, etc. Because there are certain things that can be infused in them. And I mean, in a lot of the different cultures, Haitian is one of them. You can say, okay, I want this item to have this particular property. If it is something that is within a negative environment, it absorbs that energy. And that's why it's so, so important. So, especially in areas where, I mean, unfortunately, it's been so sensationalized. You look at Chucky,
Yeah.
or you look
That's so
at the other,
stupid.
well,
I
But in
mean,
all honesty, there are
really?
places that have items that actually do things not quite to that extent,
No.
but they are literally encased and you do not go near them. You do not make fun of them. You do not, in any way, shape, or form, put them down because the energy is so strongly encased in that item that you do not know what is going to come back to you.
Wow.
Yeah, it's
Okay.
very, very scary.
Okay.
And I have
So,
seen that firsthand.
really, so this whole idea of dolls being haunted is definitely, definitely something that is
It
to be
can be,
believed. You know?
absolutely. But you have to remember, if you look at, and I'll use this as an example, and it's not meant to offend anyone.
No, no.
You look at something like a voodoo doll,
Mm-hmm.
where it's basically enchanted with the intention of causing harm to someone,
Mm,
then it's the intention that's behind it. So if
okay.
someone is saying, okay, whoever gets this item is going to suffer or have negative energy from it, you're putting that intention out there.
Mm-hmm.
If the item happened to be, as I mentioned, in an area, a home, what have you, where there was a lot of sorrow, a lot of negativity, a lot of grief, it can absolutely be infused with that quality, and it is not a positive item. So if somebody were to receive that item unknowingly
Mm-hmm.
and they have a lower vibrational frequency,
Exactly.
yes, it can absolutely be passed on to them.
Okay. Wow. And that's for sure. And like, I mean, but if you ever were to get that kind of item, if it were me, I would take it to a church immediately and douse it in holy water and just sort of like, you know.
Well, what people don't realize is many times when an item like that might be passed on, and I hate to say it, but even jewelry
Mm-hmm.
from you know relatives and things like that, usually if you are somebody who has a good intuitive sense, you will sense or there will be something odd that happens in and around that. Um, you might have something that keeps falling, or you might notice that something cracks. Usually, when that starts happening two or three times, you might have a
Yeah.
drawer that opens, etc. That's when you get a red flag and you go, okay, what is going on with this item? I mean, now that we have YouTube, we have Google, etc., you can look up a lot of that information. At one point, they would do an exorcism on it, or they would say, you need to take it and you need to bless it, or you need to bury it, or you need to, God forbid, some places say burn it. Don't burn things unless you know what you're doing, because
Exactly.
sometimes you're releasing whatever that energy is
Exactly.
into the etheric, which is much worse.
Yeah, but that's why I would sort of put it in holy water and just sort of put it aside because at least you sort of like you douse
Exactly.
it, and if you try to because you don't know what's in it and you don't know what it's about, if you try to cut it or do something, like you might be doing something to yourself. So like I mean, no, just put it in holy
Absolutely.
water, and you're cleansed in holy water. Put it in the sun to sort of like have the
To cleanse
cleansing
it.
rays of the sun to cleanse
Yes.
it. Why not?
Well, and the other thing that people may or may not realize, especially if you go back to ancient folklore, is they would take spirits or negativity, and they would, if they believed that somebody was negative, they would literally put this spirit into an item.
Okay.
And that did happen quite often. So I mean, you might have a jar that had whatever it is, much like we were talking about
Mm-hmm.
the gin, where they're encased in something where they cannot get out. So once that's released, that's when you have this negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
So if people were saying, okay, we want this negative being's energy to be encased in this doll, or encased in a mirror, or encased in whatever it happened to be, there's a reason for it. But
Mm-hmm.
if you're getting an item, look into the history. And if you're picking
Yeah.
up a used item from a place, even clothing, and
Yeah.
people don't understand this,
Mm-hmm.
you need to make sure that you clear the clothing. And I mean, we all go to secondhand stores,
Yeah.
but items do maintain the energy of where it is that they come from.
Exactly.
So if you happen to be wearing somebody's clothing that you bought at a secondhand store, that's fantastic. I'm all for recycling and, the reuse, recycle,
Yeah.
whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But make sure if you put something on and you feel really strange from
Yeah,
it, if you get a
exactly.
weird vibe, clear it. Look up how to clear
Mm-hmm.
it
Yeah,
because people don't get what it is that it can be carrying. It really
exactly.
does carry energy.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, if you get anywhere near it and you don't, it, you know, it's exactly that. If you sort of look at it in the clothing, you feel like, ooh, I don't know. Put it aside. Walk on. Keep on. Walk on by. I remember
Totally.
buying used furniture, and I kept it on my balcony. I had this external balcony. It was a big balcony, and I just kept it on the balcony, and I didn't even bring it into the house for a long time. I wanted the
Probably
furniture.
very, very wise.
Yeah, and I kept it out there for a year. So I went through the winter and all that kind of stuff, and it was really because whatever that was there was gone after a year, and I doused it with holy water. Excuse me, and trust me, it was clear. But you have to be very careful, especially if you're intuitive
Yes.
and you're very sensitive. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Yeah.
Thankfully, most times nowadays, I mean, if I'm around something, I can pick up the energy very, very quickly, but not always.
Yeah, not always, but like I mean, I'm very very careful, and also you might want to use a smudge stick and
Yes,
smudge it
absolutely.
the hell out of it, so you make sure you're not carrying anything. But I think we've had a very, very interesting evening talking about this sort of stuff. So, long term, what do you feel that you gained by all these experiences? How has that changed you as an individual?
It's funny because I got goosebumps in you asking me that question
Mm-hmm.
because I have come to understand that I am a psychic, I am a medium. I know now that I have a higher vibrational frequency than I ever did years ago because, of course, I've done a lot of my own clearing and my own wounding,
Mm-hmm.
fixing my and healing, etc. For me, a lot of it is helping to guide individuals that come across my path. So if somebody presents something to me that might be a challenge to them, I can usually pick up different things from them and
Mm-hmm.
say, you may have an ancestor that this is an ancestral wounding, etc. Or it could be a being that's in their home if I go to visit them and I'm doing either a reading for them or I'm just picking up that there's individuals in their home, which happens quite often. And they
Mm-hmm.
just kind of look at me and they'll say, okay, you're describing this. Is this picture of what these people look like? It's like, yes, it happens to be. That's exactly who it is. Or, no, they're a little shorter, etc. Um, but for me, a lot of it is just knowing that that's part of my path and being able to help the spirits that might be caught here and being able to guide individuals and say, okay, if this is what you're experiencing, here are some possible things that may help. Or here are things that you could be experiencing because you might be living in a home. Did you ever look at what the history of the home was? Did you ever look at where the land happened to be?
Mm-hmm.
Just it's identifying all of those different things that have come across through the years that I've had things that I've dealt with
Okay.
and putting all of that experience into practice for people and being able to help them and guide them. Because I know me helping people and guiding them with my knowledge is part of my purpose here.
Okay. And in general, when you are working with people, you also offer the services, don't you? You offer the service to people. Can
We
you tell us a
do.
little bit more about
I
some of the
totally do.
services you offer?
Well, believe it or not, I have very recently finished a course and I am going to be offering it's sort of this service of understanding whether or not you're in the awakening stages and what it is that you might need clarity with. It's actually the course is going to be called From Confusion to Clarity,
Mm-hmm.
Awakening Journey. And that is very, very recent. I only just finished this course last week. And part of that also is my business, which is readings and Reiki and much more.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have so much expertise, I didn't realize I speak light language. I can give guidance from different realms. I connect to uh, extraterrestrials, to guides for individuals. I give um, called twin flame guidance as
Mm-hmm.
well because that's a big area that I've got expertise in. I can help with aura clearing, chakra clearing,
Mm-hmm.
Reiki healing, energetic healing. I also do crystal healing. I've got
Mm-hmm.
so many modalities
Yeah,
that
you
it's
do, eh?
just mind blowing. And it wasn't until I started doing this course that I thought, oh my goodness, I need to focus on something primarily, but it
Mm-hmm.
is something that I am offering as services to individuals. And I'm going to be doing what do they call it? A 5-day challenge for people that will help them to identify if there's an area that I can help them and guide them.
Mm-hmm.
And it's essentially to give them sort of a transformative fast track so that they don't have to go through all of the things and learn them the hard way like I did. Because when I was going through all of my awakening journey, I didn't have anybody to guide me. I had to learn
Okay.
all of this stuff on my own. So essentially, it'll be being able to have a one-on-one call that is going to be absolutely free. How can I help you? What is it that you're going through? So we can see together, is there something I can offer you assistance with? And then what portion of that? Because I mean, it spans from here all the way down to the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I'm learning still, but as I've learned, I am now at my stage of healing and awakening where I am here to help other people on their path as I'm still going through my healing. But that is part of what I'm meant to be doing.
And that's great.
And I love it.
And do you have a website that we could sort of post in the notes?
I will have to send it to you because I don't know it off the top of my head.
Okay, no
I don't
problem.
have a website. I do have an Etsy page, but I'm going to be doing some revamping on that. But
Okay,
I can actually give you an email that if anybody wants to send me an email,
sure.
it is, give me 1 second here
Mm-hmm.
because I don't know it off the top of my head.
No, no problem.
It's Reiki. Well, it's kind of like when people ask for your phone number and you go to give them your phone number and it's like, I can never remember my phone number because I don't
Exactly.
give it. It is. No, what happened here?
Yeah. But
There we
while
go.
while we're doing that, I just wanted to say, guys, if you have any more questions or you can always sort of reach out to Angela and
Absolutely. I
you know.
love helping people. Okay, so the email is readings, so readings,
Mm-hmm.
Reiki,
Mm-hmm.
Reiki, much more
Mm-hmm.
dot by Angela
Mm-hmm.
at gmail.com.
Okay, great. So everybody, if we can ask the moderator to write that down in the chat, and so people can click on it, and you can get in touch with Angela if you have any questions.
Absolutely.
And Angela will definitely be coming back to the show more and more, so no worries there. And I do have an interesting comment from Kelly. Kelly
Okay. Absolutely.
she had two questions, which sorry for guys, people who are just coming in now. I'm still getting over a horrible cold, so I'm coughing and hacking away. I'm so sorry. Kelly
We'll send
says,
some Reiki energy to you right
"Thank
now,
you, thank
honestly.
you."
No, seriously. That is also your throat chakra, by the way.
Yeah,
I don't know
exactly.
if you realize that, but
Yes.
that is the other thing is I read energy
Hmm.
and I'm very in touch with that
Hmm.
because when I hear different things and see different things, that's part of what I do.
Exactly. That's perfect. And Kelly says something here that I actually was actually wondering about. She says, "Does salt help with positive intentions?" Now, I think salt is good as a protector, like when you're doing like a ring or something. You want to just sort
Salt,
of clarify?
okay. Yes, salt does help with positive intention. Salt is very much a protector,
Yeah.
and there are different kinds of salt that you can use. But if you are really, really stuck, just regular table salt. And one of the things I used to do when I was ghost hunting was before I went out, I would sprinkle a ring, and you need to do this on soil because it needs to, if it rains, be able to go back into the soil. So
Hmm.
you would literally put a small ring of salt around yourself,
Hmm.
and it's just like putting that ring of white light around you, and it's essentially saying
Hmm.
only um,
I guess positive.
beings, information of the positive and highest love and light are welcome within my field, and everything else is cast out. You are not allowed to enter within this field.
Hmm.
When I was finished, when I would ghost hunt, I would do the exact same thing. Now, interesting that you would talk about salt because if you have ever had negative entities come around, there is
Hmm.
something called black salt.
Oh,
And
okay.
it is a special combination. And I have had to use that. And this sounds really macabre, and it's a whole other story.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually had to banish negative entities and
Mm-hmm.
malevolent energies,
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
black salt.
Mm-hmm.
But you can actually purchase black salt as well. But yeah, regular salt, Himalayan salt. Part of what you have to remember is salt is also very ancient.
Mm-hmm.
Don't use iodized salt. It's,
No.
if you have
No,
to, go
please.
ahead. But I mean, if you really don't have to, don't.
No.
Salt, more pure that it happens to be, the better,
Mm-hmm.
because it's ancient. It comes from
Yeah,
the sea. It
exactly.
comes from the water, and just the whole way that it's been processed, it really doesn't help. But if it's
Mm-hmm.
ancient and it helps, then it's because of those energetic properties that it carries.
Exactly.
And it's crystal based. Salt
Mm-hmm.
is crystal based.
Exactly, exactly. And I think that if I'm not mistaken, Celtic salt is actually one of the
Yes,
more
it's
powerful and
fantastic.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And another question from Kelly, which I was also thinking about as
Thank you,
well.
Kelly, for your
Thank you,
questions, by the way.
Kelly. Kelly,
Love
you
it.
rock. And she says, I've also heard through watching so many ghost hunters on TV that sometimes it's not the house or the object that is haunted, but the person. Now, that's an interesting concept. Did you want to just sort of like expand on that
Um,
concept a bit? Not really, eh?
usually, well, no, no, I can't.
Okay.
Absolutely. Usually, if it is the person, it is because they have some sort of a negative being or entity or energy attached to them. And it's because they are living in such a state of ego that they've actually drawn those things to them.
Mm-hmm.
There are lots of different ways to get rid of things like that, but a lot of it is just getting out of your ego concept.
Mm-hmm.
Many times, though, and unfortunately, it's been again so sensationalized. It's been so Hollywood. You look at things like the Blair Witch, or oh, what is the one? I I can't think of the name of it now.
Mm-hmm.
It, Linda Blair
Oh, The
with the
Exorcist.
thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We're, there sometimes there are attachments, real attachments that happen like that,
Mm-hmm.
but a lot of times the individuals don't use any kind of cleansing practices. They don't go through, they don't smudge their home. They may not use salt. They may not use any kind of even a um water cleanse on themselves, where
Mm-hmm.
you can very simply say, okay, I am washing all the negative energy away, and just picture all of the negativity going down the drain.
Mm-hmm.
That in itself is so releasing. If you don't know, and I mean, obviously being esoteric and being of the uh, mindset that I am now, I've learned all of these things. But if you're somebody who has no knowledge of that,
Mm-hmm.
if you don't have guidance, then you don't know.
Yeah.
So the more guidance that you can have, the better.
Yeah. And just to sort of add as a sort of a side note on that, taking a shower is a good idea. And what I've done when I've been in a situation where I've been with somebody negative, where I've been in this negative situation, especially when you go somewhere and there's a lot of people, it doesn't even have to be sort of a negative thing. It could just be sort of like you went to like a family dinner, or you went to the church, or you went to something where there's a lot of people. You have a lot of different type of like energies, and sometimes that can sort of drain your energy as well. And what I do is I take a big sort of like bowl, and I put like in the shower with the water, and I put a couple of drops of lavender oil, lavender essential oil, and the lavender essential oil, and I just sort of pour it over my whole body. And I find that that also helps to just sort of like raise my energy and to just sort of just clean. I mean, yes, my body's physically clean because of the soap and water, but also I find that the using the lavender oil. I mean, I also have liquid smudge here from a guest that we had here a while back called Luke Blue Eagle. He's a Native American shaman, and
Yes, Luke is wonderful.
yeah. And if Andy, if you could just sort of pass me the liquid smudge, and
The
this is
other thing
yeah, and this is a
that
smudge that
people
he
don't,
makes that is
oh,
Chiang,
wonderful.
and it's a liquid smudge. And I can tell you, when you use this, you can feel it working. I sort of put some here, and he's done it before where you spray it on your hands. And I can tell you I'm going to be smudging after this conversation because also
Yes,
when you talk about stuff like this, you have to make sure that you're not because we're getting close. You know what I mean?
absolutely.
I put a bit here, put a bit there, and I just clean my
The aura,
the aura,
absolutely. Well,
and all
and
that.
that's the other thing that I was going to mention, and it is something that I do as well, is people don't realize just even the interaction that we have right now
Yes.
on social media with all of our viewers, we are actually getting cords attaching.
Yes.
One of the things I do is cord cutting. And it's very, very important. People don't realize you maintain cords from every individual and all of those individuals. So it's like a spider web. I'm
Yes.
dealing with these 5 people, but then I'm dealing with all of those people that each one of those has. So if you don't clear your cords or cut your cords when you are dealing with individuals, that maintains itself on your body and within your auric field. Past energies, past life energy, and you can pick up negativity from anybody else. And when you're going out in public,
Yes.
especially if you're going out to some place like the grocery store, or where there's going to be a lot of people, and God forbid, I love the holidays, but there's tons and tons of people out there. Bubble yourself in white light.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Bubble of white light around you, or
Absolutely.
gold light. There are so many practices that are out there that helps protect you from everybody else's energy. And you
Exactly.
will notice a difference, a marked
Yeah.
difference when you do it.
Exactly. And that definitely when you have a lot of people there, because even though, yeah, they're my family. Yeah, I know. But they also, their family is people too. And sometimes they might have, stuff that they're
Yes.
going through, and you don't want to pick it up and, sort of bring yourself down. And it's nothing to say like, you don't respect your family, but it's just that there's a lot. And it can be very emotional, especially during the holidays. A very, very emotional time, a dark time.
Absolutely.
Personally, as much as I like Christmas and it's all fun because I get time off, Christmas can be a very dark time. Christmas can
Yes,
be a
it can
very,
for
very
many
dark
people.
time. And I find that the sky is a lot darker and everything's just dark. And it's just like I don't know, there's something about Christmas
And
which
we
is a
have
bit
less sunshine for the most
less
part too,
sunshine. Yeah.
which really makes a difference because we've got that difference in the solar energy, which is very interesting when you think about it. We were talking about AI
Three Eye Atlas.
earlier,
Yeah.
Three Eye Atlas, thank you. If you think about the timing of it, right now we are going into the darker months, at least where we happen to be in
Yeah.
the northern hemisphere. So they are bringing those codes in because we are unable to get a lot of those light codes from the sun right now
Exactly.
because we've been covered in cloud cover.
Yeah, exactly. And somebody brought it up today. I was speaking with Jason and he was saying how it sounds kind of interesting how for some reason there's a lot of like cloud cover for the last couple of days. And I mean, look, we can
Yes.
go off on another rabbit hole, but that is kind of interesting. But I think that what's also interesting is that in the month of November, we're going to be getting a lot of high cloud bursts from the sun. So those
Yes.
sun codes are going to be coming rolling in and like knock people over. But I mean that's what has to happen. You sort of have to like really
Yes, be
blast it out.
prepared. Make sure that you watch your energy, be an observer as opposed to being embroiled in it,
Yeah,
because that is what's going to help to keep you on an even flow
exactly,
and grounded. If you can get out, ground, ground,
exactly,
ground, ground, whether it be near water, whether it's near soil and Mother Gaia and Earth, you need to ground. It's going to
exactly.
be very important.
Well, wow, we have been around the sun and back. This has been a
We
very,
have
very
100%.
interesting conversation. What do you think?
I think it has been fantastic, and I hope
Yeah.
that our viewers have really enjoyed it. I mean, it's a wealth of information, and until you start touching on one subject, you don't realize how much they are interconnected with each other.
Exactly. Everything is connected. Everything. But
They are.
I just want to say thank you so much, Angela, for all that you do. And you were talking about cord cutting. And actually, if you go further back in our collection of videos, guys, you can find a video with Angela. She did a complete retrospective on the cord cutting. She came and with us a couple of months ago and talked about cord cutting. So please check out that video. And she talks about how to do it and what's necessary, and it's a really really good presentation on that. So you want to just check out that video again with Angela talking about cord cutting, energetic cord cutting. So check that out. And Angela, can you give us your email once again for people who want to? And I'll ask the moderator if possible could put it in our chat. What's the email again?
Yes. It is readings, Reiki, much more dot by Angela at gmail.com.
Okay, perfect. And so we will get that in the chat. And also, we were talking about Three Eye Atlas because it's going to be very interesting and it's going to affect a lot of people. We are going to be having a show on Friday, December 19th, talking about Three Eye Atlas. So I hope you all guys can join us. That time is going to be very, very interesting. And I just want to say thank you again, Angela, for coming tonight. As always, it's
It
always
has been my
beautiful,
pleasure.
you
It
know?
has been my utmost pleasure. I'm sure I'm going to hear, well, I'm going to have to message Kevin and tell him that I sort of botched up earlier.
We
That's
tried.
okay. He knows I'm going on very little sleep at this point in
Mm-hmm.
time. But hey, yeah, and I will send to you for our viewers. I
Mm-hmm.
will send you the remainder of the show
Okay.
because I know that I have another section, but it's quite large, and we just didn't have enough time to put that in.
Yeah.
But I mean, that way you can attach it for anybody who wants to see it. I know Kevin normally does post portions of his show, but
Mm-hmm.
we also had given the link for the live streamed version of the show, which obviously is going to be a lot more steady than what my hands happen to be. And you're more than welcome to watch that. And that was all through Gothicarcadia.com. I think that's how they pronounce it. It was through Damien Crypt's site
Okay.
anyway. But I did attach it, and I know I put it in the website for us.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. And so I just want to say thank you again, everybody, for joining us on Friday night at this
Yes, you
time.
have
Halloween was fun.
everybody has a phenomenal Halloween.
Yeah, it was a really, really fun Halloween, and I'm so glad that you were able to spend it with us, Angela. I really, really enjoy having you. You have such positive energy, and you're always such a
Oh, thank
beautiful
you. And you as well.
soul, and I just absolutely just love you. And we were supposed to be there in person, but we'll see each other again in
It
May.
will happen in May. Absolutely, it will
Yeah,
happen in May.
it will happen in May. And I just want to say thank you to all our members for coming in tonight and for being patient
Yes,
with our
thank you,
snafus.
everybody.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Sending beautiful white light and golden light out to all of you.
Hmm. And I'm just sort of wondering now that we've finished this topic, could we sort of do like a bit of a clearing for all of us just to sort of clear
Oh,
up?
absolutely, we can do
Yeah.
that.
This is sort of just,
Okay,
just
absolutely.
clear out because
Yes.
we talked a lot
Well,
about heavy
if
topics tonight.
you
So I think we
are
need to clear
in,
out a bit.
and because tonight is one of the thinnest portions of the veil, however, I will clarify, I just very recently found this out.
Hmm.
I thought that this was the thinnest of the veil. Apparently, the veil is very thin up until winter solstice.
Oh, really?
Yes, I just very recently found that out.
Okay.
So, having said that, I think we
Hmm.
definitely need to have a clearing. So, if everyone can just close their eyes for a moment.
Yeah. Can I just ring the
Oh, absolutely,
yeah,
please.
just sort
Yes.
of like change the energy
Yes,
here.
we
So
will change the energy
yeah,
with
I'm
the
just gonna
clearing.
grab my singing
And again,
bowl.
everybody can close their eyes. I
Yeah,
love your singing bowl, by the way.
yeah. So I'm just gonna do that. I'm gonna do 3 rings, and then I will let you carry it on, Andrew.
Absolutely.
Okay,
My pleasure.
here we go.
So, if everyone could take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, I want you to exhale out any of the negativity that you may be holding on to. And as you do that, what I am going to do is send out a very large group clearing. And what we are doing is we are literally wiping away any of the negative cords that might be holding on to you. We're wiping them away from your head, from your neck, from your shoulders, from your arms, around your fingertips, on your left hand, from your arms, on your right hand, from around your fingertips. We are going down your body, on your back, down your sides, down your front torso. We are now clearing the cords from your legs, from your upper thigh all the way down, going down around your lower leg, around your feet and the bottom of your feet, around the back of your leg and the sides of your leg on the lower side, coming up to the front and coming back up to the top. I am now going to encircle everyone with a layer of white protective energy. So picturing that surrounding your body as a big cocoon, essentially. And it is going to go around 3 times so that you are protected. Now we are going to encircle you with gold light as well from Archangel Michael, and sapphire blue at the same time. So I am encircling everyone with a beautiful cocoon of sapphire blue and gold around your entire body and being. And again, I'm going around 3 times for that. And lastly, we are putting a layer of mirrors facing on the outside so that any negative energy that may be put towards you harmlessly falls away and is transmuted into love. And I give everybody blessings and love and light tonight. Thank you.
Wow, that is absolutely perfect. Thank you so much, Angela, for that. And I just wanted to say, I wanted to call upon Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael, be with us at this time. Please protect us and surround us with divine white light. I call upon Archangel Michael to surround us with divine white light and to banish all negativity. Use your sword to cut away any negative cords. Use your sword to cut away any negative cording. Use your sword to cut away any negative cords that may harm us or be in our way. I call upon you, Archangel Michael, to be with us at all times. Amen. And so it's not about being a Christian or whatever. That's not it. It's about protection.
No,
so
absolutely. And I did actually, as everyone was being encircled, that is who I call upon always, is Archangel Michael.
Archangel Michael. So call upon
Yes, great protector.
Yeah. So I want to say thank you again, everybody. I'm so glad that we were able to be here tonight. Just one last couple of gongs before we go to just sort of seal the deal.
Clearing energy.
And I just want to say thank you to everybody for being here tonight and for being with us. We'll hope to see you again next week. I want to just say thank you again, Angela, for being amazing as you always are, and for being here for me. Or is that the 11th hour?
Thank you, Crystal. You know? Hey, not a problem. Always my pleasure. And I thank everybody for sticking with us during all of our little lovely retrograde interruptions and snafus. Thank you to all of those that are out here, and I'm sure everybody that gets to see this on the replay will absolutely enjoy what they see.
Perfect. All right, guys. So without further ado, thank you again. Thank you, Angela. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Guys, there's a ton of you. Please subscribe. It really helps us. It helps the analytics for our videos, and it really helps us in general with getting the word out. So please subscribe. If you have any questions, send me an email. And if you have any questions about any kind of healing work, you can always reach out to Angela. She can always help you with any questions that you have or any kind of work. She's there to help you. So without any further ado, thank you again, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you next week.
Take care. Happy Halloween for the next couple of hours.
Yeah, happy Halloween, everybody. All right.